At the Office of Alumni Engagement, we are focused on offering many ways for you to connect with Memorial from anywhere in the province, the country, and the world. And we're working diligently to foster opportunities for alumni and friends to celebrate their connections with Memorial and with each other. MUNalum 101 was born out of the need to reach out to alumni during the first few months of the pandemic. It has since evolved to become a cornerstone of our alumni engagement activities, offering the latest information on key topics from Memorial University's own experts. Embarking on new and exciting ways to build relationships within our Memorial community is vital to our evolution as an institution. Just a few housekeeping issues. A brief Q&A will follow Dr. Allen's presentation. I will be monitoring the Q&A and the chat functions, which you will find at the bottom right hand of your screen. So you can type your questions in there. Please try to keep your questions short and try to post them as soon as possible. Attendees are not able to unmute their microphone or turn on their video, but you can communicate with others through the chat. And you can also enable closed captioning on the bottom left-hand side of your screen. And if you'd like to customize your view of the presentation, there's also an option to do that on the top right-hand side of your screen. We are streaming live, but this session is also being recorded, and all those who registered will receive a link to the event in a follow-up email. It is my very great pleasure to officially introduce our special guest today. Dr. Tana Allen is a professor with Memorial's Department of Classics in the Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences. Classics as a discipline focuses on the study of the ancient Greek and Roman world. Dr. Allen is trained as a classical archaeologist and social historian. Her academic output focuses both on ancient architecture and medical practices. A significant focus of her research has been the development of ancient Roman healing spas and their integration into concepts of health within ancient society. As an academic administrator, Dr. Allen was instrumental in rebuilding the Department of Classics at Memorial and served as department head for 13 years. Providing the space for everyone to do research is a core focus of her academic practice. From July 2020 until the summer of 2022, Dr. Allen was the Associate Dean Research in the Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences. She is now the Acting Vice President Research at Memorial. Dr. Allen is regularly sought out as a supervisor by Canadian and international students. Her former students and research assistants work all over the world, from Canada to the US to New Zealand, spreading a passion for and deeper knowledge of classics. I will now be turning the presentation over to Dr. Allen.
Thank you, Janet, for the very kind introduction, and hello, everyone. It is really wonderful to be here. I'm so pleased to be able to be here today, and I'm really pleased that this virtual space has become a wonderful opportunity to reach widely to this community. What I'm planning to do today in today's talk is to introduce the research environment at Memorial. I'd like to then explain a little bit about my own research journey as a new researcher at the beginning to now an administrator of research. And I'd like to then describe a little bit about what it is that I research, hopefully thereby demonstrating that research has many faces. And finally, I'll wrap things up by contemplating a little bit about why research matters, both to me and in a broader way. So let's get going. If we were, most of us are aware of the word research, and we pretty much are aware that Memorial University has as its core activities both teaching and research. Research, if you do a quick Google search, is defined as the systematic investigation into and study of materials and sources in order to establish facts and reach new conclusions. That's from the OED. We might find another definition where research is defined as the studious inquiry or examination, especially investigation or experimentation aimed at the discovery and interpretation of facts revision of accepted theories or laws in the light of new facts, or practical application of such new or revised theories or laws. Both of these are what I might like to call big definitions. And I'm hoping today to give a little insight beyond the definition, and by the end, to demystify a bit more what happens in university research. At Memorial, we like to promote our research activity, especially about activity that is impactful, activity that has a perceivable effect on our world. We use a lot of numbers to describe research. More than $175 million last year in total sponsored research income. Something like 885 PhD students in 2021. Memorial is one of Canada's top 20 research universities. We have more than 2,245 research publications in 2021. We rank in the top 101 to 200 global universities in the Times Higher Education Impact rankings. We celebrate achievements in research, especially considering the people involved, and continually look to grow what is frequently referred to as the research enterprise. All of this is captured in various kinds of reports that have various audiences, sometimes to the academic community, both locally and globally, often to the general public, and occasionally to government officials or others. And you might recognize some of these publications from past times out of our office. This one, Research Matters, we used to publish that. This is a graphic that we've often used to explain our growth. And this is an inventory where we used to keep track of all of our funding and activity. We also tend to notice research that is sponsored by a funding agency, that is research that is attached to money. And you can see on this graph the upward trend of income generated by sponsored research. Memorial is known as a university with many significant research areas. Oceans-related research is something Memorial is widely known for. 40% of research at our university is tied to work in, about, and on the ocean. And I've put up on the screen in front of you just a few snippets of stories over the last few months that showcase the importance of oceans work at Memorial. But we don't only do oceans. Indeed, as noted in the Times Higher Education rankings, as a research-intensive institution, Memorial has notable strengths in a wide range of other areas, including natural resources, health, technology, social enterprise, innovation and entrepreneurship, climate change, and social justice. Memorial is definitely proud, and should be, of its research endeavor. In fact, this year marks the 30th year since the founding of the Office of the Vice President Research, and an intentional focus on intensifying research activity. Research is something we talk about a lot, especially when, as Janet mentioned, when I'm serving as Vice President Research, as I am right now. These are the ways that we are accustomed to when talking and thinking about research. But there's another aspect of research that I want to keep in mind as well and explore a little bit today. And as we go forward, I want to keep this thought in front of us. Research in all its forms is essential to the creation of knowledge and the betterment of the world. And I would say that these words in front of us right now are my views on research. This isn't a quote from anyone. This is the way I think about research. So a little about my research journey. I've been at Memorial since 2001. It's hard to believe it's over 20 years. I've been a professor, a department head, an associate dean research, and now vice president research in an acting role. Before arriving in St. John's, I had a bit of a geographic and academic journey, which I'll share with you. My experience in each different institution gave me opportunity to try out different things and to build a network of connections. So I grew up in the United States, and after high school, I attended Amherst College in Massachusetts, where I completed a BA in Classics and English. My undergraduate degree focused almost primarily on experiencing texts of all sorts, including literature, music, art, and film. We analyzed these texts very closely. We read Dante's Inferno. We listened to Bob Dylan. We worked out the differences between Manet and Monet, and we struggled with interpretations and translations of the Greek tragedy playwright Aeschylus. Read, interpret, analyze. These were the skills drummed into me and my fellow classmates as the path to knowledge. I headed from my undergraduate days to graduate school in Austin, Texas, and realized that there was an additional element in discovery that I hadn't quite come to terms with yet. This was the ability to find out what others had already said about a topic or an idea. I hadn't been prepared as an undergraduate, it turned out, to do what is often called research. In order to fill in the obviously missing gap, I embarked on a mission to correct what I clearly had not quite sorted out. I spent hours in libraries poring over articles and decades-old publications, trying to get my hands and eyes on every single written thing about topics such as the healing god Asclepius or the production of clay lamps in southern Italy. This was what was told was the way to do research. Build a huge bibliography, find all the items in that bibliography, and read it. Read those items, collect the information. This worked up to a point. I next landed in Edmonton, Alberta, to complete a doctorate or a PhD. When it came time to write the big project, my PhD thesis, an entirely new set of problems emerged. I knew how to read a text or how to collect information and how to find out what others had said about a topic, but I didn't know really how to ask questions. I wasn't exactly sure what might be a good question to ask. First, there was the problem of thinking up questions in general. But then the more important question was to think about questions that mattered to me or mattered to a community more broadly. I now would call that the so what question. In order to complete my PhD, which I thought at the time was the culmination of my research work, it turned out to be just the beginning. My research work on Roman healing spas in Italy forced me to read all the text closely, gather all the previous contributions, and to figure out the big so what question. The point of all of this is to suggest that the notion of learning how to do research and what it is really part of a long journey. As we become more knowledgeable in an area, we both gain more information, but also the ability to generate the questions. I thought, incorrectly as it turns out, that my undergraduate degree had led me astray because it hadn't taught me how to do citations or how to create bibliographies. In fact, my undergraduate days had set an incredible foundation and had really set a stage for developing research as a lifelong inquiry. At MUNalum, this is something I always keep in mind in my ongoing research projects and as I work with students. So what is it that I do as a researcher? Well, classics is the name of the discipline in which I was trained. This is a term that refers to the study of ancient Greece and Rome and geographically centers on the Mediterranean Ocean, but extends into Northern Europe, including Britain, and extending to modern day Iran and Turkey. Generally speaking, the time frame of classics is roughly 700 BCE to around 500 CE, something like that. A little bit earlier, a little bit later, depending on how you count it. It's roughly a 1200-year time span that ended over 1500 years ago. There's a vast area, and the map in front of you shows you an awful lot of it, of the area that I work on. It's a vast area and clearly a long time period. I consider myself to be a Roman social historian, that is, someone who studies the society of ancient Rome, with a strong focus on Roman material culture, that is, an archaeologist. I have spent, I've studied and read ancient Greek and Latin, and I've spent many summers doing excavations in North Africa and Italy. I'd like to take the time now to outline just a few of the projects I've been involved with as research areas over my career. So first, let me start off with Roman healing spas in Italy. In the early years of my research, as I was working on my PhD dissertation, I was generally known as the spa lady because I looked at Roman healing spas, especially focusing on the clientele who used spa facilities. This work was part of a larger conversation in which other scholars were trying to better interpret the hundreds of known public bathing facilities in the Roman world. And the images that you have in front of you include some of the texts that I was using. The colorful one on the top here is from a 13th century manuscript that shows public bathing and dining. The map on the bottom, a little bit hard to read, is another 13th century document which actually maps out a whole bunch of bath buildings. And then the map of Italy on the right side of your screen is actually from my dissertation. It was created in the days before easy graphics. It's all hand drawn. And that shows all the various healing spas that I worked at. So I was really curious in my dissertation work to contemplate the who at the baths, at these healing spas. Were women present? How did the staff and personnel operate the facilities? Who made recommendations to use specific types of spa waters? Were there any medical authorities present at healing spas? I spent time in archives and libraries. And if I go to the next slide, you'll see my visits to many, many archaeological sites, all the while trying to find the evidence needed to work towards answering the questions that I raised. And I'll spend a moment on these images. The image with all the children in it is actually from North Africa, from a site called Hammamellig in Tunisia, and it is a fully functioning Roman bath building fed by spring waters that still is very popular for visiting today. On the top right of your slide, Jebel Ust is an archaeological site. You're looking at the main bathing pool portion of the facility. And Aquae Tauri on your bottom right is another large pool fed by spring waters. And I went to all of these sites and investigated the materials. During my graduate years, I became very closely involved in the excavation of a 2nd century Roman bathhouse, in particular in Carthage. And you can see Carthage is just at the end of this red arrow on this little peninsula sticking out from the modern country of Tunisia. So I became very closely involved in the 2nd century Roman bathhouse in Carthage. And our excavations revealed not only a bath building complete with colorful mosaic floors, and you can see a couple of examples on your left of this, on the left of the screen. There's also a large scale swimming pool that you can see in the main, the center of the right side of the screen. So we found this bath building, but also an extensive cemetery that made use of the ruins of the building after it stopped being used for its original purpose. This work, which extended over many years, was a major project, and our team was made up of local Tunisian workers and dozens of Canadian students. Not only did we make a meaningful contribution to understanding the urban landscape of ancient Carthage, we also gave significant opportunity for cultural experiences for the students in training. My research connections in Carthage have led to many requests to process what are typically called small finds on archaeological sites. And what you're looking at here is a box full of small finds on the right side of the images, and on the left side, all the documentation that goes with these small finds. So small finds are things that are not big. These are typically the objects from an archaeological excavation that are not architectural and are things that one can imagine being used by people thousands of years ago. And in front of you, you have an image of a number of small finds that I've been working with, fortunate enough to work with over the years. The first image is a seal stone, and on the left side, and actually all the way bracketing our pictures here on the right side, is the impression made by the seal stone. The second image is actually a bone hairpin. The green bead is a part of a piece of jewelry. The fourth image, beg your pardon, is a fragment of a dice or die. And then the fifth image here is actually a little ear scoop for cleaning wax out of ears, kind of like an ancient Q-tip. One goal of processing these kinds of objects is certainly to provide information about the date of a site, but also to get more knowledge about the manufacture and trade of materials. I've been working to catalog hundreds of objects. And again, as I said, these really give us a notion of the people using these objects. I think we can all imagine this lovely little ear scoop going into an ear and pulling out that earwax. Also developed from my early interest in healing spas, and I've always had an interest in this healing spa work. And while I began visiting Disney theme parks on holidays with my family, I began noticing that modern spas capitalized on ancient decorative motifs to lend an air of authenticity. This meant the hardship of visiting spas for research, but also to have visits to Disney theme parks in particular. My interest in the spas expanded into a wider question of the ways that classical motifs are used, and I've been cataloging the ancient references at Disney parks throughout the world. And you can see here just two examples of this. At the Magic Kingdom in Florida, I suspect many of us have been there, where you can see, so that the image on the left-hand side is the facade of the ride, and then inside, where it's blue, you can see a rendition of a temple, kind of abstract temple. That's how it's presented in Florida. In France, where there's perhaps a greater awareness of classical motifs in general, we have the outside with the flags visible of our ride of It's a Small World, and then inside some images that speak more directly to ancient monuments, the Colosseum in the pink on the bottom of the rightmost image there. And I hope I haven't gotten It's a Small World stuck in anybody's heads. I'll try not to sing it. I continue to be interested in the ways in which a fully constructed fantasy world, where, the ways in which credibility is created through reference to ancient pasts. And I'm often aware that these encounters of ancient ideas in a theme park may be the first or even only chance someone today may have with that information about the past. And we're looking at another example in Florida. This is Spaceship Earth in Epcot, the iconic golf ball at Epcot in Florida. And inside of that iconic golf ball is a ride that takes you through civilization, essentially, and communication. And this is the text on the top of the image on the right-hand side is what someone might hear. The ancient Greeks were great inventors of the future. First, they established public schools and then began teaching an intriguing new subject called mathematics. And so this becomes someone's entry point into ancient ideas, and it may or may not be particularly accurate. Similar concerns about the ways that ancient motifs is also evident in the design of video games. And this is a huge market and place of youth engagement. I'm interested in the use of Latin, ancient Latin, in a game called Civ 6. Civ 6 is a video game by Sid Meier, which presents the development of civilization as a raced technology. The Roman Emperor Trajan, and you can see him right in the center here, appears regularly in the gameplay speaking Latin. And fans spend hours scrutinizing the accuracy of the Latin and the representation of Roman soldiers or buildings. You might be able to just make them out on the right side of your screen. How are the individuals of antiquity being presented, and what impact does that have on those who receive that kind of representation? More recently, I've become aware of the ways by which 18th century travelers to Labrador and Newfoundland, having been educated in ancient Greek and Roman Latin, ancient Greek and Roman language and culture themselves, may have looked through a classical lens at what they encountered in their travels. While it is generally well known, for example, that the Moravian missionaries had a great deal of influence on Inuit society, what is less discussed is the ways by which missionaries framed their time in Labrador from the perspective of their own cultural background. The study of classical languages of ancient Greek and Latin were central to the Moravian educational curriculum. And on the very right of your screen, you can see the front page of a text by John Comenius, a 17th century Moravian scholar. And you can see in the burgundy right in the center of your screen, a piece of an item from the Moravian church in Makovic, and it is still in Latin. There's a connection that was drawn between education, societal rank, and knowledge of antiquity. I'm interested in assessing the early documentation of Labrador to add further to the conversation about colonialism and its effects. And finally, I cannot leave out my freshest research area. After having seen a performance of the spectacular award-winning show Hadestown, which is a musical about two ancient Greek myths, one, the tragic love of Eurydice and Orpheus, and secondly, the fraught relationship of King Hades and Persephone. After seeing this, I embarked on a close reading of the modern musical in relation to ancient texts by Latin poets Virgil and Ovid. Among the many discoveries, I found there was much to consider in terms of identity, voice, and authority. And while looking at that, another research opportunity appeared in the very theaters of Broadway itself. I'm planning to be taking a closer look at the spaces in which Broadway presents itself, full of classical motifs and full of room for interpretation. You may have noticed a few things as I've been giving you a dashing account of my research activity over my academic career. First, I have done lots of different things. It has not been a straightforward trajectory of research that grew from one idea into a full-blown planned out research program. Research can often be the outcome of serendipitous circumstances and connections. Secondly, I haven't made mention of funding and grants, although I have had some grants and funding over the last 2 decades. There is a clear need and role for funding. It is definitely an important part of the research enterprise. But we also must recognize that there is lots of exciting, innovative research happening in unfunded ways. Research comes in all shapes and sizes. Thirdly, people are at the center of everything I do, and many researchers do. We are always probing into questions of the people. Who did what? How do people react to the information? Are we able to provide new training and new opportunities to individuals? What is the effect, in my case, in looking at my reception work, what is the effect of the representation of antiquity on those who interact with the information? Finally, I want to just spend a moment thinking about why research matters, both to me and for Memorial. Why I do research. Why do I continue on these activities? Well, research is centered on curiosity. I am driven to find out about a topic because it is intriguing and there is a puzzle to be solved. Research comes from personal commitment and engagement with a topic. My most fulfilling and inspiring topics have been the ones that have come from that place inside. Research ensures that thoughtful engagement occurs, that we think about the outcome, that we think about ways to share that information. And that's really important to me. And finally, in terms of why I do research, research requires big thinking. This is really back to the so what question. It isn't enough to simply like something. There needs to be some value in it that is beyond just liking it. There should be some sort of discernible impact. And we aren't always able to immediately see that, but it should be in our minds. And finally, why does Memorial help researchers do research? Research enhances our knowledge of the world. There's no question about that. We find out more about the world in which we live in. And this will drive innovation and to help us in new discoveries and breakthroughs to ultimately address the challenges that are facing our world. We want to create a better world to live in. Research in our province is, of course, good for the economy. It strengthens our economy and it also strengthens our society. Research at Memorial is part of recruiting and retaining elite scholars so that they become part of the fabric of our province. In the end, research has been and will continue to be a significant part of my life experience and also my academic work. I've had the opportunity to travel throughout the world in pursuit of ideas and the sharing of ideas. I have, I think, influenced many, many students and colleagues, and I've taken a professional path that has led me to being in a role that enables me to support the exciting and thrilling world of research. I hope I've demystified a little bit, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you. So Janet, over to you.
I'm back. Thank you so much, Dr. Allen, for that. That was incredibly enlightening, and I'm sure everyone is just absorbing what you said and all those things about the so what question and the serendipity around research, which I found was really, really interesting, your story. Thank you so much for sharing it. Before we go to questions, I just want to briefly mention that Johnson Insurance offers Memorial University alumni specially designed policies and preferred rates on home and auto insurance and also travel insurance. So there is a number there that you can call for more information, and there's also some a web link on our website that you can visit as well. So now on to questions. Now, I don't have any questions yet in our chat or our Q&A, but people shouldn't be shy. If they have questions for Dr. Allen about research or about her specific research into, I mean, ancient medical spas and swimming, and I mean, I'm just amazed at all of that you shared, and those connections with those classical motifs in so many unexpected places in Disneyland, for example. Amazing, right? And the theaters. Uh, it's really astounding, isn't it? How that ancient world kind of has become part of our world, infiltrated our world. Now we do have a question here, I think.
And I have one in as well, Janet.
Great. Okay. Does Dr. Allen feel that her years of study, hold on one second, sorry. How do you feel about the years of study and how that might have caused you to start your career later than others, like the full-fledged academic career, or and how does that sort of affect you? Because there's many years involved, isn't there, at those levels, at master's level and PhD and things like that. So how do you feel about that?
That's a great question. So
Yeah,
I went through just about as fast as someone in my discipline could go through. I never took any time off. I did the minimum number of years. So I did my 4 years of a BA, 2 years of an MA, and 4.5 years for the dissertation. It's pretty hard to go any faster than that.
mm-hmm.
It's a lot of study, and without that amount of preparation, I would not have had the depth and breadth of knowledge that makes it possible to ask those questions that are at the center of research. And honestly, even today, I feel very much a student in research, and I continue to be developing. And in preparation for this talk, I actually looked back at some of my older materials and thought, oh, I'd ask different questions now. So it's an ongoing journey of preparation. Of course, it does mean that you start later in your career.
Mm-hmm.
I was fortunate enough to receive some funding through my graduate years, but it definitely has an impact on your life decisions and the way you go about it. I think I mentioned probably too much that research and the training, you have to have that personal commitment that drives you through those long years.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Uh,
There's a question in on my chat, and
sure.
the question is, what is the value of involving students and community members in research? I am so glad someone asked that question, because I didn't get a chance to put in the talk because I wanted to make sure I didn't go too long. I didn't talk too much about involving students and community members in research. It's huge. The value, I mean, I get too excited when I talk about this, but the value in involving students um, is enormous. Students are curious. They want to be involved in research. I've actually just recently formed a research group, and they are so excited to be a research group, and that drives me into helping them, sustaining them, training them, figuring out how to professionalize their work. So it's excellent to have students involved. Community members are that other part of research, and having community members both feed the research enterprise and engaging with community members is critical. It's also part of the public engagement piece. So having community members both feeding in and receiving the knowledge that is part of the research activities is critical. Different ideas, different perspectives, it is all essential to doing better in our research activities.
That's a great answer. Chad Pelly has a question. He says it's not the most cerebral question, but he's curious. How does one deduce that object was an ear scooper?
Yeah,
Um,
that's a great, It fits in the ear. And I can't tell you how many times I've had students take one of those things and try to fit them in the ear. Actually, we have descriptions of from in the medical writers that describe these little ear scoops. They're called each one is called a ligula, and we know what they look like, and they're often made in bronze, not always in bone. So yeah, it's a great question, and it's part of the kind of detective work around these objects, and in general in research. I mean, sometimes we think about research as the great detective work.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's great.
Yeah. So sort of is the ultimate detective work, isn't it? You
And
know.
I could actually say one more thing, if I may, about these the ear scoops. There are still very similar objects used in Japan today, almost identical to the Roman objects. So we often use that kind of comparison too.
Jonathan Anderson has a funny comment. He says, to really engage with the nuances of portrayal, do your students have to spend much time playing Civ 4, which I take it is that video game?
Yeah. So Civ 6,
Civ
you
6,
know,
Civ 6. I don't know
well,
my Roman
no,
numerals. Sorry.
there's Civ, it actually started in Civ 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 is the latest rendition.
It says 6, actually. I misread the
Okay.
Roman numerals. Sorry.
And the hardcore players actually prefer Civ 4 to Civ 6. Um, so yeah, I actually hired a research assistant to play Civ 6 for me. And my student spent hours and hours and hours playing Civ 6 and documenting it and collecting all the Latin phrases, because it's actually kind of hard to get it from the game developers. And the same student also spent time collecting fandom quotes. And yeah, so it can be kind of a pleasurable activity too. And we were really interested in the ways that the community are interested in the ways that they receive classical knowledge. And that's just so interesting.
Did you see this comment from Paula? She says she can have her 10-year-old do that for free.
Absolutely, Paula. Bring him on. I'll get him a copy of it.
Um, Another kind of a more serious question. How difficult is it to get funding for a PhD or research at any level? Is it only public funding, or is there some private funding available? And how does one go about finding private funding?
That's a really good question, and that really I can answer that, especially from my role as vice president of research, more so than as a classics disciplined researcher. So funding for grad students typically comes from the institution. It but it comes in different ways. So Memorial funds its graduate students. We have an envelope of funding that is provided to graduate students that uh, um, meet certain thresholds. Students can also avail of funding opportunities by working with established researchers, so professors and researchers on campus. If a student's research activities align with a researcher, they're likely to receive funding that a researcher will have gotten from a granting process, from that sponsored research envelope. There is some private funding, but that's not typically in Canada the way we fund graduate students. And there's more to say about that, but maybe I'll leave it there for the moment.
Okay. Here's a question from Assad. He's asking, what are the possible ways toward fostering a maturely quantified research culture? I think that's a good question.
So um, I think honestly, having discussions like this very discussion help us do that. I am clearly, as you heard, I am a big fan of thinking about the research enterprise from all activities and getting away from a single size, a single look for what research is. And that will help us think about a mature approach to research and being able to keep track of it in different ways. I take that very seriously, and I appreciate that kind of question because it kind of helps me see that I'm heading in the right direction. So
Hmm.
I think that's really quite a helpful question.
Hmm. Can I ask a question? How do we keep track of it right now? I mean,
Mm.
is that a am I am I opening up a can of worms? How do we keep track of it?
Um, I think we keep track. It's very easy to keep track of funding,
Right.
sponsored funding, because it goes into our database. It's very easy to pull that out. It is harder to keep track of the unfunded projects,
Mhm.
and it's kind of my job to find out what people are doing. And so typically departments have a good handle on it, or faculties and schools will have a good handle, and then that ultimately should feed up to me. Um, but it's an imperfect system,
Mhm.
and yeah, so I'll maybe stop there.
Okay, fair enough. Do we have any other questions out there? Because if we don't, I know that Dr. Allen is very busy this week because it's research week. And I think that there's lots of events going on. So I know that people can go onto the research website and find out more. I could even pop a link in the chat to that. But if there isn't any more questions at this moment, we might just leave it there. Any other questions? No? Okay. Oh, wait. Oh, that's just a comment saying that was awesome. So that's
It's
great.
great.
We love it when we're awesome, don't we? So our concluding remarks, let me just pop up our final slide here. Um, Thank you so much, Dr. Allen. That was really fascinating. It was so interesting to hear your own personal research journey, and I just think it is just so amazing, like one thing leading to the other, sort of, it's very non-linear, which I appreciate. Um, any final words that you would like to share with our audience here today?
Um, yeah, maybe two things. One, it's Research Week. There are, as Janet mentioned, there are over 70 events happening on all four campuses across the province. Um, Lots of them are virtual, lots of them are hybrid, lots in person as well. Find something, if you can, that you don't know something about already, and see if you can learn something new. I challenge you, encourage you to learn something new. So Research Week, Janet's just put the link up in the chat for that. Thank you for that. And the other thing I would say is I am always available to talk about research or anything else that's on your mind. Feel free to reach out to me. I'm pretty easy to find at Memorial. You can find me at vp.research@mun.ca, or just Google my name or whatever. My door is open, and I'd love to talk research or anything else that you're interested in. So thank you for having me here today, Janet.
Thank you, Dr. Allen. If you enjoyed today's event, please check out our alumni website for information on upcoming events, including something that we've just confirmed. Exciting to note that we are going to have a Coastlines event with Rick Mercer that will be online on December the 12th. We're also going to have an Ottawa Holiday Social in Ottawa on December the 6th. So there's information on both those events on our website. And as I indicated earlier, this session has been recorded, and we will be sharing a link in an upcoming email to everyone who registered. So please keep your eyes on your inbox and share it with others. And everyone, we hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day. And thank you so much for joining us here for this event. Bye.